Thanks for your patience. Let me introduce the first speaker in the first Sales and Marketing Lit Fest 2023, Dobbe. Ton is a former B2B software product marketeer and the founder of Value Inspiration and the author of The Remarkable Effect. That's what he's going to talk about today. This thought drives him. Imagine how fast we could solve the world's biggest problems if more SaaS startups could gain traction sooner. Today, as you know, more than 90% fail. As such, his mission is save mission driven SaaS CEOs from the stress of not enough traction by turning their businesses into one the world talks about and keeps talking about. He hosts the Tech Entrepreneur on a Mission podcast and writes a daily newsletter on the secrets of mastering predictable traction. Uh, I read his newsletter every day, and if you are not subscribed to it, do go out and subscribe. Ton, welcome.
Thank you. This has been
I
something
will,
I've been looking forward to.
Thank you, thank you. I'll drop off and leave the stage to you and take it away.
Okay, thank you. Can I move the slides forward, left and right?
I would do that. Just tell me and I'll move it, okay?
All right, good. Yeah, sorry for the glitch. Always last minute things come up that you don't expect. But welcome to this session, and I'm honored to speak to you today about my book and about the thoughts behind it. So yeah, the title of the book sort of says it all, The Remarkable Effect. And I want to kind of stand still here with this slide indeed about this word remarkable. Because if I look at the dictionary of this, you know, it's what it stands for is something is worthy of attention. It's striking. It's worth making a remark about. And if you're creating a business and you're creating products that are worth making a remark about, then you're on the right track. And that's what I wrote my book about. I wanted to understand and I wanted to get on paper why certain B2B SaaS companies, because that is my background, software companies, why certain software companies are the ones that we start talking about and keep talking about, and why are others don't get in there, and what is behind it? What's the difference? Because at the end, you know, running a business is you deal with that. It's about execution, but there's a little bit more than that in order to become remarkable. So if you go to the next slide, that's already alluding on the point that Subhanja made. What the research indeed shows is that 90% of all startups fail. And when I came from Unit 4, the company I used to work for in the product marketing, product management function, it was a large company, and I started there pretty early in my career when it was around 100 people. And when I left, it was about 4,000. And I wanted to start up my own business. And I wanted to not work for another startup anymore, or for another large company anymore. I wanted to help those companies out there that, are struggling not to fail. And of course, when you can see this number, it's a huge number. And that's bad. If you go to the next slide, what's even possibly worse or more striking is that 75% of scale-ups fail. And these are companies that are actually supposed to have product market fit. You know, they've got customers that are paying for it. They are moving forward. They're getting towards maybe even profitability. Still, 75% of scale-ups fail. Was the whole motivation. And the idea that started to build in my head, and I needed to write a book about it. So you go to the next slide. My big question was, why? Why do so many software companies fail? And why do we so often ignore the power of the word remarkable? And the next slide is then, how that came about in my book. And the book is, as you can see there, it's the essential book for what I call tech entrepreneurs on a mission. And it really explores why your business isn't as good as it could be, and what to do about it. So it's a very practical book at the same time. If you now go to the next slide, the book is built up on around what I call 10 traits. What are the 10 traits that characterize those remarkable software companies? And I can go through them very quickly. They realize they can't please everyone. They go one slide back. They offer something valuable and desirable. They strive to be different, not just better. And the list continues like that. But for today, I want to focus particularly on the first three. but let me first explain how I build up the structure of the book. Now you can go to the next slide. So remarkable SaaS businesses, they stand out and scale up around 3 different stages. And that's also how I put structure in my book. The first structure is talking about the value foundation, the traction foundation. The second part is about building momentum. And then the third part is about building resilience. And I've put the word traction in front of it because at the end, for a software business, it's all about creating predictable traction. First of all, to get your software business and your software products being bought, but then later on, when it starts to decline in the growth, how do you get that growth back on track? And what I found from all the case studies that I got in my book and all the companies that I spoke to through my podcast, for example, is that a remarkable software company is sort of characterized, and you see that there is more focus, they have more fans, they have higher margin, they have higher velocity of deals going through the process. But the typical software companies, they focus more on the total addressable market, the TAM. They add more people to solve a particular problem. They actually are struggling with more churn, and they also end up with more tough conversations. Although they, of course, gain customers and of course do business as well. So there's a big difference between that. So let's go to the next slide, because once you're in a mode, there's one left. One, you're going one too far. That one, exactly. Companies, it's a very hard thing to do at the end. But if you focus on the right ingredients, it doesn't have to be hard. What I see with a lot of software companies out there is that they sort of get stuck in a vicious cycle, and very often they end up with desperately chasing funding. But that's a completely different argument. What I see there is that they start off on the wrong side on the marketing part. So they get the wrong leads into the funnel. Conversion is low, all of those type of things. So the marketing metrics are underperforming. What they end up with doing is, yes, they feed the funnel, and sales needs to then follow up on that. And they're creating a huge problem for sales because there's a lot of waste in the funnel. 80-90% of the leads that are in there, leads between air quotes, aren't going to buy anyway. So you have to sift through that. What you then see is that there's long deal cycles and people struggle to get the deals in. So what you see is that at some point they get desperate and they start giving discounts. That's another problem that I see a lot. But they end up bringing the wrong customers into the business. Yes, they are customers. Yes, you can help them with your functionality, but they're never going to be fans. And what these companies are typically doing is they're going to keep you very, very busy. On the implementation side, because they don't want it for what it is. On customer success side, it's hard to get their early wins going. But also, for example, on the R&D side, because they're going to ask for features that you never would build in your product, but because these customers are asking it and you want to get them happy, that's what's going to to occupy your backlog. With that, R&D is getting behind, releasing products to the market that are not so good because they're fixing bugs, or not bugs, but problems that are gaps and no one really cares about them, or at least your right customers not. So adoption is weak. That is going to influence all the metrics, NRR, net revenue retention, churn, profitability, and so on. All the way, I'm talking about a vicious cycle leading up to unpopular measures, whether you do that yourself or whether you're forced to do that by your investors. So go to the next slide. What you see is that it all starts with your foundation. That's what I call it. I'm calling it your traction foundation. And that's about 3 key ingredients. The first 3 chapters of my book. What you see there is that remarkable software companies acknowledge that they cannot please everyone. So it's all around like niching down almost. The second thing is that they offer something valuable, but more importantly, they offer something desirable. And these 2 things are really important together. And then the last thing is they aim to be different and not just better. Because if you try to be better than your competitor, it's a never-ending game because you cannot outcompete the internet. These days, there are so many competitors out there. They're all releasing their ChatGPT stuff to the market. It's very hard to differentiate it. So they follow their own path. Go to the next slide. And I want to go through those first 3, and then the next slide again, the first 3 traits. The first one being acknowledge that you cannot please everyone. And I want to give you a couple of helpful tips that you can actually start implementing right away from today onwards. Next slide, please. So what I've seen with all the customers that I work with, and actually also my own work at Unit 4, and this is actually a slide that I created back in 2005, and it keeps its value. When you look at the marketplace, and a lot of big mistakes are made when people are talking about their ideal customer profile, their ICP. What they do at the end is that they define it by demographics and firmographics, so like how big they are, how much revenue they have, how many employees they have, in what regions they are, all the things that you can look for on LinkedIn. What you need to start realizing is that, for example, if you're focused on the service industry, that's what I was focused on in the beginning at Unit 4, no service organization is the same, wants the same, or acts the same. Yes, they all want to improve a number of key metrics like bottom line, top line, and they want to be better in operational excellence, and they want to have customer satisfaction, the 3 things that you see there, and then more of those. But what you do see, and you go to the next slide, is how they go about it is radically different. And if you understand that, that's where you can create a winning strategy. And this is a slide for one of my customers, Top Desk, for example, who are selling to IT, well, to service organizations, and typically start with IT. They're in the ITSM space, IT service management space, competing with the likes of ServiceNow and companies like that. When they were selling to companies and they started to look into it later on and try to understand like what was going wrong, what they typically found out is that the companies where they had deal slipping, poor win rates, high discounts, project overruns, and all the things in the red box, although these companies looked exactly the same on the outside, like their best customers, what they found out is that these were often top-down organized, very process-oriented, departmental focused, and all of those type of things, where they had very short sales cycles, high win rates, premium deal values, and everything in the green box there is where these companies had a completely different characteristic. Like they were promoting the bottom-up motion, like employees know best. They were promoting people to focus on improving outcomes. They were really supportive and applauding for cross-departmental synergies rather than keeping everything in the department, etc., etc. So what it means is, if you go to the next slide, if you define your market too wide, and a lot of companies think it's exactly right, and it's wrong. So what I typically would call your ideal market profile rather than your ideal customer profile. And this is something that is an interesting one. Once you start understanding that, you realize that what you've actually done is you created your ideal market profile, and you have win rates around 10, 15, 20, maybe 25% if you're lucky. The moment you start to organize it around what your ideal customer is all about and the characteristics that they have, your win rates will really go up to the 80s and 90s. And that's what we experienced when we started to do that. Initially, we were always competing at Unit 4, for example, with companies like SAP and Oracle. And the moment we saw them coming into a deal, it was almost like, but how can we win from those guys? You know, they got all the functionality, they have big marketing budgets, they got far bigger brands, until we got this right. And this is where everything changed. So if you go to the next slide, what was this all about? Will your question likely be? Well, it was about going beyond demographics and firmographics. And you can see kind of a glass and a cocktail glass right and left. If you are focusing on the demographics and firmographics is what I would call you're creating like a glass of water. It's good, you know, there's water in there. Your customers will be somewhere there. There's no taste to it. And you have to search for what's good in it. The moment you go and find out what your ideal segmentation cocktail is, you start to put in the right ingredients that really characterize your ideal customers. Like, what are the dynamics that define them and that define their business? Are they, are they in a business that's maybe heavily organized around regulations? Are they in a business that is heavily impacted by mergers and acquisitions? All kind of dynamics in the business that they either do themselves or that the external pressures are putting on there that make them, that give them different problems than the other people in the marketplace. Another ingredient to that cocktail, and like you see, it's making it really nice. It's like understanding what they stand for. Do they stand for speed, agility, or do they, for example, stand for quality and reliability? Two completely different things. You cannot see that on the outside. What do they value, for example? Do they value long-term customer relationships, or do they value rapid growth? Do they value customer loyalty versus high profitability? I mean, all of these type of things. What are the things they really value? And because once you understand that, you can start to hit the right nerve with them. What do they secretly want? It's always good to understand. They say this, but in the back of their mind, they want something different. What are their aspirations? What are their hopes that will happen once they start working with a new solution? Another ingredient would be, what are the risks they tolerate? Are they, what is non-negotiable for them? Quality, or is it reliability? Is it, I mean, like all the type of words that you can start to think of. The moment you start using those words, your right customers will say, hey, that's me. If you now go to the next slide, what is looked for a company that I recently worked with, this is a company in the kitchen retail business, Sinclair. Out of all the markets that they were selling, they realized we're not the best for every kitchen retail supplier, and there were different sub-verticals underneath there. What they were really getting a lot of traction with was quality committed kitchen professionals. Now, if you look at this and you're a kitchen professional, one thing you will say, okay, yeah, that's me, or that's not me. Where it gets even better is like the three things on the side. Companies and people that value three things: being dependable, delivering experiences, and financial security. What we found after in interviewing a lot of customers in that space is that these things really boiled to the surface. And now that we're starting to use that, this is where the click is going to be there, and you can start to kind of mention the right. You can start to hit the right nerve with them. This is where I'm going to point number, or trait number 2. So the trait number 2, next slide, is create something valuable and desirable. So once you know what your ideal customer is all about and what they secretly want and what they stand for, what they value in these type of things, then this is going to be very important. The next slide, I'm going to introduce you to my triangle. In my book, I'm talking about it at page number 24. And by the way, you see a little buy button there. It's actually going to my website. You don't have to buy it there. You can actually download it for free. But what you see here is a triangle, and Jonathan Stark, I've interviewed at some point on his podcast. He actually called it the broken triangle, because if you get it wrong, it's broken. The triangle is at its top strength, when all three bars are equal in size. What you want is there to be high values, and it's about three simple questions. Looking at all the problems your customers have, make a list of that, 20, 30, 40 problems. Then start to look at each problem and say, okay, how valuable is this for your customer to solve it from their perspective on a scale of 1 to 10? The second thing is, how urgent or critical will it be for them to solve this problem on a scale of 1 to 10? And then the third question to answer is, what is your ability to exceed expectations solving this problem on a scale of 1 to 10? The moment you start looking at your full list of problems like this, and you have these three columns laid out, it becomes a formula. The first two, value and critical, they become like the value perception for your customer. And the moment you start multiplying them together, you end up with a number between 100 or between 0 and 100. You want to focus on everything that's sort of above 80. The moment you bring in your own ability to exceed expectations with your solution, and that is where really identifying where you are remarkable for them, because it's about exceeding expectation, and you multiply that with that mix, you end up with a number between 0 and 1,000. And I can tell you, everything above 500 is where you can really start to nail down and hone in on what makes you remarkable and really start to tune your value proposition around it. And that is exactly what this trade is all about. Offer something valuable and desirable, whereby, of course, you will stand out. Now, let's go to the next slide, because I realize also time is skipping by. Then we move to trait number 3. Be different, not just better. And this is all about taking position. Too many software companies forget to take position. Go to the next slide. If you don't take position, the market will position you. Your customers will position you in a way that you might like, but most often you won't like it. What's worse is that your competitors will start to position you exactly how they like you to be positioned. So the best thing you can do is to position yourself and take position and claim a space that you can own. Next slide. And that's about the slide, this one. So you come from the cocktail, you have your ideal customer profile, your ideal segmentation cocktail. You know exactly what are the problems that are highly valuable for them, that are highly critical for them, so mission critical almost, and where you can make the biggest difference. And based on that, you can then start to say, okay, we might not be the best solution for everyone in the marketplace, which is the red ocean that everybody is in, as you can see at the bottom there. But we are the best when it's about two things. And then name the desires, the ones that your customer are really going to be vulnerable for. That when they see, okay, yeah, I want this and this, but ultimately, this is what I really want. And that is where you can start a position around and take position around your those two criteria. And because it is about high value, high critical problems, and it's about how you can exceed expectations. So what makes you remarkable? Where is your defensible differentiation? Your competition will immediately be at a distance. What you typically see is that a lot of us in the software space think about their competitors and start to compare them on a function by function basis, where you realize that everybody in your competitor space is sort of doing already 90 to 95% the same type of functionality. But what you also have to realize is that none of those solutions were created equal. How they were created is completely different. So how you solve a problem with that functionality is going to be different. And that's where you can take position on. So this is where we found out that we could compete extremely successful against the likes of Oracle and SAP. To that extent even, that they started to qualify out when they were realizing that we were in the right deals, obviously. So that's how powerful it is. You become uncomparable. The next slide, almost there. So what you see, what I've been talking about, is only 3 parts of my book. Like I said, like one back here. And if you start to kind of blend these 3 together, and acknowledge you cannot please everyone, offer something valuable and desirable, and then aim to be different, not just better, the power unlocks when multiple forces join. And you see the big wave again, which I also started with. If you read my book, by the way, this is about a story within a story. And it's actually the journey that I made here from Spain, from Gabia, all the way through Valencia, to Barcelona, to Porto, all the way to Nazaré in Portugal. This is where they have these enormous waves of sometimes over 100 foot. That's remarkable. It's unique. And that's something that you can create in your back that pushes you forward. If you do these things, if you start to do these things right, so that's what I would recommend you to do. So next slide, you have a choice, obviously. You want to be remarkable or you want to be typical. If you read my book, you will definitely have high chances of meeting that bar of becoming a remarkable business. So over with that, I want to kind of close the session with Q&A. If there's any questions, let me know.
Hey Tom, that was really remarkable, and I'm not trying to pun or be funny. I think there is so much that we packed in the last 20 minutes that it actually tells me that deeper thinking is required than just following playbooks of what worked 5 years back. I think situations have changed. Unfortunately, we have no time to take in questions. And thanks, Hamsvardhan. Appreciate. I really think that this format looks very exciting to me. This was the first presentation, and I really loved it. Tom, thank you so much. Sorry about the glitches that happened. We did try, but
exactly.
It happens from time to time, right?
Exactly.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I mean, everybody is online. I see there's already well, so there's not a question, but actually a remark. Thank you for the remark. If you got any questions, reach out to me on LinkedIn, for example, and we'll talk further.
No, actually, if you post your questions, I will ensure that these questions are sent out to Ton and we get the answers back to you.
Perfect.
Okay.
Let's do that.
Thank you, guys.
Okay.
That's the
Thank
end
you.
of this session. See you in a bit.